So, really quick, if you haven't seen my most recent episode on Sten, Paranoid Partisan, make sure you check that one out because, yeah, this commander can combo off as early as turn 1. It very well might be the new combo king. But don't leave just yet because this commander on this episode had me saying, "What?" right when I saw it. So, to see what I mean, well, let's jump into it. So, the commander on this episode is Rona, Sheoldred's Faithful, a 3/4 human wizard for 1 blue, black, black. So, Rona is no longer a disciple of Gix, which I believe was the card's name back in Dominaria when we first saw Rona, but now Rona is apparently Sheoldred's Faithful. So, yeah, I mean, done with Gix, now, you know, with Sheoldred, great. Anyways, let's keep reading. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 1 life. And then you may cast Rona, Sheoldred's Faithful from your graveyard by discarding 2 cards, disobeying its other cost. Now, to be completely honest, okay, well, first, this is not a bad commander at all. This is a commander that, well, can benefit you, obviously, if you are, you know, spell slinging, if you, really want to drain your opponents quickly. You can do that really well with this kind of a commander. And also, even if Rona is dealt with, you can get it back quite quickly by just, discarding some cards. You've got plenty of ways to draw a lot of cards in these colors, so discard some cards. Cast it for just 4 mana instead of having to pay that commander tax. So, yeah, that can be quite a powerful effect, being able to get around that commander tax. And over the game, you can train your opponents quite effectively with this commander. That being said, and the reason for the title of this episode and what my initial thoughts on this commander were, and basically what I said right away when I saw this commander, is, well, I'm wondering what Wizards is doing with this one in particular. I really don't understand. I mean, yes, what this commander does make sense for the colors. Okay, yeah, spell slinging, you can get that, from blue typically. And then, okay, draining life, obviously, it's in black. Also discarding cards, to get it back from the graveyard, also in black. All makes sense, okay, in that. But when it comes to the actual character itself, there really weren't too many disappointing commanders from that original Dominaria. Even out of all the uncommon commanders in Dominaria, I mean, Tatiova was an uncommon commander somehow in Dominaria. So yeah, there are a lot of very exciting uncommon commanders back in the original Dominaria. And yeah, in this set, there's a lot of exciting ones as well. And back then, there weren't too many misses, even at uncommon. But in my opinion, the original Rona, Disciple of Gix, was quite a miss. But Rona, at least that version of Rona dealt with artifacts, which, I mean, I'm really not all that, familiar with the entire Magic backstory, but I know that obviously Rona is, was a disciple of Gix, which deals with artifacts, and yeah, I don't believe from anything I've seen that Rona would really care about spell slinging. In fact, in the initial card, Rona was an artificer, and now somehow over to a wizard in this one, though it looks like, at least from, the artwork, still working with a lot of, artifact type things, Phyrexianizing people and whatnot. But yeah, again, sorry, I'm probably destroying the Magic story right now. My apologies, lore mages out there. But yeah, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on this, but I assumed, and I was very excited to see this brand new Rona, and it was hoping that this is going to be basically redemption for just being a pretty, again, in my opinion, not a very good commander at all with the first version. And then this commander just kind of falls flat when it comes to at least, very least flavor, because this commander has nothing to do with artifacts, and I think you could have a very exciting Dimir artifact commander built around Rona. So again, I'm just kind of at a loss on why Wizards decided to make this version. It really doesn't make any sense to me. Now, okay, sorry, I'll get off my little soapbox here. But yeah, that's just my first thoughts on the commander. Now, that being said, obviously, like I mentioned before, there are still some really cool things that you can do with this commander. And yeah, I mean, a Spellslinger, drain your opponent's commander can still be very effective, especially one that you can keep getting back. So apologies for that quick rant. Again, quick takes up. Sometimes I don't know where I'm going to be taking them, but yeah, let's Now jump into the cards that work well with this commander, and just ignore the fact that I talked about, a bunch of artifacts. I mean, apparently I've got artifacts on my mind after the last episode, but yeah. Let's jump into those cards right after I remind you that in the description below, there's a link to the list of the cards I'm talking about on this episode, so if you're interested in this commander, make sure you check that link out. And now that said, let's jump into it. So first up, and again, I probably need to get this out of my system after the last episode where I talked again about that turn 1 combo win, but sure. Hey, if you've got Isochron Scepter, and you've got Dramatic Reversal, and enough mana rocks to essentially tap for 2 mana with your commander Rona in play, you win! Isochron Scepter lets you exile Dramatic Reversal, and then essentially by paying 2, you can copy the exiled card, and if you do, you cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Dramatic Reversal says, untap all non-land permanents you control. So again, if you've got enough mana rocks, essentially, either just like a Soul Ring, or, 2 mana rocks in play that you tap for 1, cool, you can just keep doing this an infinite number of times, and again, you are casting that copied version of Dramatic Reversal, so yes, infinite cast, and then that would be, infinite draining with this commander. Now, obviously, this isn't the only commander that can effectively use, Isochron Scepter as a combo piece with Dramatic Reversal, but it is one that obviously can just be a win condition without having to, generate additional mana, on top of that, or, do something else in order to win with this combo. Now, combos aside, of course, and yeah, I probably need to get that out of my system after the last episode, but yeah, combos aside, cantrips themselves, of course, can be very impactful to this commander as well. For example, opt as an instant that says, scry 1, draw a card. So yeah, some good card selection on top of some, actual card draw for just 1 mana, and again, this is basically just has stapled onto it. Each opponent loses 1 life thanks to your commander. And speaking of life, well, we can also lose life ourselves with Jataxian Probe, but I mean, not all that much. It is Phyrexian Blue as its mana cost, so you can either pay blue or 2 life to actually cast it. We look at target player's hand and draw a card. So this essentially can be a free cantrip for us, and again, we get that cast trigger from our, commander, so we can drain our opponents. We might be losing 2 life, but we're draining, a total of 3 life, and we get to draw a card, so yeah, that's pretty worth it. On top of also getting to see a player's hand as well, which can definitely help out in a lot of circumstances. Speaking of helping out, we can have one of our creatures help out with Village Rites. We have to actually sacrifice a creature to cast it, and we just draw 2 cards again for just 1 mana. So this can be a very effective low-to-the-ground card that can provide us some card advantage, and yeah, we've got plenty of ways to make creature tokens. We'll talk about that here in a bit, so we can have some great creature fodder for this. Now, when it comes to card advantage, we can also utilize flashback cards as well, or, I should just say in general, cards we can cast out of our graveyard for some additional value again for our commander. So we're not only hitting it the first time with that trigger, we're also getting it the second time as well when we flash it back. So let's talk about deep analysis. Target player draws 2 cards, flash it back for 1 blue and 3 life. So in a similar way, of course, you can also consider Jumpstart cards like Radical Idea, draw a card, and Jumpstart basically is, like flashback, but essentially you're paying the mana cost and discarding a card addition to it. And we'll talk about some potential benefits from discarding cards here in a bit, but yeah, Cast Through Time is another kind of a card that you might want to consider, one that deals with Rebound. It's an enchantment that says instant sorcery spells you control have Rebound, which of course means that you basically exile the card as it resolves when you cast it, and at the beginning of your next upkeep, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. So you get to cast it once, and then a second time from exile next turn, and again, that's 2 cast triggers for your commander, so essentially, again, that can double up, basically, the amount of life that you are draining from a single card, and again, doubles up the value that you're getting from that card as well. So yeah, make sure you're considering rebound cards as well, especially a rebound effect like this that just, basically helps all of your instant sorceries. But also make sure that you're considering cards that can actually cast multiple spells on their own. I mean, let's talk about cards like Talon the Telepath, Brawl's Expertise, and Inspiring Refrain. Talon the Telepath says, target opponent reveals the top 7 cards of their library. You may cast an instant sorcery card from 1 without paying its mana cost. That player puts the rest in their graveyard. But if you've got Spell Mastery, you can cast 2 of those for free instead. So for 4 mana, again, and Spell Mastery is very easy for this deck to get with all the instant sorceries you're going to be running. So for 4 mana, you get basically 3 triggers off your commander, and again, you're basically casting 3 spells, 2 of which are going to be free. And depending on what your opponents have on the top of their library, you can hit some pretty massive things. Regardless, next up there's Brawl's Expertise, which is going to bounce 3 target artifacts and or creatures back to those hands, and it's going to let you cast a card with converted mana cost 4 less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So this can just give you some additional free value. You get to cast an extra spell, on top of being able to bounce things, which is great. You get an extra spell for free, which again is another cast trigger if you're casting an instant sorcery for your commander. And then another kind of card to consider is one like Inspiring Refrain, which says draw 2 cards, exile it with 3 time counters on it, and of course you can suspend it for 3, 4, 2, and a blue. So basically this is a card that can just keep casting itself over the turns, and yeah, again, every single time you do that, yep, you get to draw some cards, which is fantastic, and also you are draining your opponents each time. So again, whether it's a card that you can recast from your graveyard, or one that, you know, you get to cast extra spells with, or one that just keeps casting itself, make sure you're considering cards that can trigger your commander multiple times throughout the game. Moving on, of course, we want to consider other triggers for our spells with cards like Tolerant Sky Summoner, Jace's Sanctum, and Swarm Intelligence. Tolerant Sky Summoner is going to make us a 2/2 blue Drake creature token with flying every single time we cast an instant or sorcery spell, so yeah, we can fill the board very quickly with some evasive flyers. And again, like with a card like Village Rites, this can really help out, at least having some creature fodder around for us to utilize. Or how about a card like Jace's Sanctum, which helps us out in multiple ways. Instant sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast, and every cast an instant or sorcery spell, scry 1. So first up, this can save us a ton of mana throughout the game, a lot of mana that can really be used for other things. And of course, by scrying when we cast our instant sorceries, we can actually help set ourselves up for future turns and future draws. And speaking of value though, Swarm Intelligence is an incredible card, especially in a Spellslinger deck like this. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may copy that spell, you may choose targets for the copy. Getting extra value out of every single one of our instant sorceries is huge. Now, keep in mind, this does not trigger our commander. I mean, at least I should say, getting that copy does not trigger our commander because, well, our commander doesn't, like, you know, have Magecraft. Speaking of which, though, of course we can utilize Magecraft as well on cards like Archmage Emeritus, Sedgemoor Witch, and of course, Professor Onyx. Archmage Emeritus says whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcery spell, draw a card. So of course this can provide us a ton of value throughout the game and draw us a lot of cards. Next up there's Sedgemoor Witch, which is a 3/2 with Ward, pay 3 life, which is nice because a little bit of protection on this can be great. Of course on top of that, Magecraft, whenever you cast or copy an instant sorcery spell, create a 1/1 black and green past creature token with, when this creature dies, you gain 1 life. So like Talrand, another way to fill the board with creatures, and of course, again with those pests, we actually get a benefit when they die, so yeah, those Village Rites types of cards can really come in handy with this as well. And finally, if we want to take our opponents out even quicker though, yeah, Professor Onyx is a fantastic way to do that. Let's just read the Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So basically a better version of our commander's trigger, again counting both casting and copying instant sorceries and also taking that, you know, life loss up to 2 and our life gain up to 2. But yeah, in combination with our commander, this can make things go even quicker. Moving on though, another thing to consider is how our commander's ability that we can get it back from our graveyard can impact the way that we build this deck as well. So let's talk about cards like Obsessive Search and Dread Return. Obsessive Search is another great cantrip in this deck. It's a 1 mana draw card spell, and it also has a madness cost of a blue. So madness basically means that we can play this card for its madness cost at the time we discard it from our hand. So if we're utilizing our commander's ability to get it back from our graveyard, well, we're going to be discarding some cards, and if those cards have madness, we can still get value out of them. Speaking of getting value out of things though, you might also want to consider some reanimation spells for this deck with a card like Dread Return. It says return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, and of course on top of that, it's got a flashback cost of sacrificing 3 creatures, which is fantastic again. But yeah, I mean, if we are utilizing our commander's ability to get itself back, we're going to be discarding cards, and maybe we're going to discard, you know, maybe some pretty big creatures potentially, like a Diluvian Primordial maybe, and being able to actually just get that into our graveyard and then cheat it into play with a reanimation spell like Dread Return can be a very impactful way of going about it. Especially since Diluvian Primordial has a fantastic ETB. When it enters the battlefield for each opponent, you may cast up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. So yeah, basically up to 3 spells for free. And again, that's going to be 3 triggers on our commander, draining our opponents. So yeah, just some extra, you know, salt in the wound to our opponents. Hey, we're going to use your spells against you and drain you because of that. Other kinds of cards to consider are ones that deal with life loss, like Warlock class, Wound Reflection, and Exquisite Blood. Warlock class is level 3, says at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. So once you get to level 3, you can drain your opponents even quicker by, actually draining them quite a bit with your commander on your turn, and then also, again, draining them at the end of the turn with this trigger. Next up, though, a more effective version of this card, though, comes with Wound Reflection, which says at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses life equal to the life they lost this turn. So this counts every single turn, not just at the beginning of our own end step, which can be huge, especially if we're going to be casting instants, during our opponent's turns. Next up, Exquisite Blood can also help us out, though. It says whenever an opponent loses life, you gain that much life. So yeah, now every single time we cast instant or sorcery spell, we again drain for one each opponent. If we have 3 opponents, that's 3 life in total. So we're going to be gaining 3 life with this. Of course, on top of just gaining life when our opponents lose life in any other way. And obviously, since I'm mentioning this one, I have to mention, yeah, Sanguine Bond, sure. I mean, if you want to do that combo with this too, I'm sure you can pull it off, like in every other deck that wants to utilize that too. But now this episode is coming to a close. It's time for me to give you my final thoughts on Rona, Sheoldred's Faithful. Now, maybe I wasn't being completely fair at the beginning of this episode. Again, I mean, if this was just a different legendary creature, would I care as much? Probably not, but I was really excited, again, to be honest, to see what Rona had in store for us in this new Dominaria set, because again, I think the first one was kind of a flop. Again, that's just my opinion. I'm sure there are plenty of players out there that do enjoy, Rona, Disciple of Gix. I just had a lot more hopes for this new Rona, Sheoldred's Faithful, and I was very much expecting it, and I think other players might have been as well, to be dealing, again, with historic, with, artifacts. Not exactly, instant sorceries, which again, please, Lord Mages, in the comments below. Is Rona a human wizard now for some reason instead of an artificer? Does Rona now care more about spells than about artifacts? I doubt it, but I could be wrong. Nevertheless, again, sorry, off my little soapbox. If you are interested in this commander, again, drain your opponents very quickly with spells. Yeah, there's a lot of players out there who are probably be pretty excited about that. Make sure you check out the link in the description below for the card list that I talked about in this episode. And of course, make sure that you're staying tuned for even more exciting spoilers and quick takes coming up. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you. So make sure you comment below and let me know what your thoughts on this episode are. And as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.